want to change gears a little bit and talk a little bit with you about business, and in particular, part of what you built as a business and a reputation is around social engagement.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit, Russell, about why social engagement is so important to business today and to business leaders.
Of course. Well, one thing that you hear certainly from CMOs and anyone in the C-suite, but particularly CMOs and the people who report to them. And there was a terrific article yesterday that I saw in Forbes where a survey done of CMOs and about ad agencies in agencies. And that is they're being asked to do more for less. There's an incredible downward pressure on folks based on the economy, but also based on an understanding and an assumption that a lot of CEOs and people surrounding them have, that technology and media have advanced to the point where you ought to be able to do all the things that you used to be able to do more effectively for less money, right? And a little bit of that has to do with the erosion of the long-standing 60-year-old assumption that the only way to build a brand is by doing TV. And I think over time people have realized that that's not necessarily the case, and it certainly doesn't need to be the case, that the only way to measure TV is Nielsen ratings and consumption. And I think there's a little bit of a dirty little secret that's being sort of exposed over the last 5 years, that's not the only way to build a brand, and that just because you're advertising on TV doesn't mean you're actually engaging people. So you have a lot of downward pressure on CMOs to do more for less, and you also have a realization that there are other ways of building brands. And so if you put those together, you realize that if you can, as a marketer, figure out how to engage people using all this great technological advancement and media on a one-on-one basis, but at scale, you now have a much more emotionally engaging, but also measurable way of connecting with people. And so to me, that's really the foundation for a move towards social media, and certainly was the foundation for SS&K's move towards defining it as social engagement. So instead of, for example, a lot of questions that you get from marketers, how do I use social media to market my brand or product? Which is a classic question. We reinterpreted it as, how do you market in this social world where there is a lot of downward pressure on marketing executives to do more for less, and where there is an incredible opportunity to use one-on-one means at scale to engage people.
So is there any room left for Monologue built brands? What's their
You know what, I actually think there is. I would love to sit here and be sort of the iconoclast and say, no, television advertising's dead. If you got a lot of money and you're a brand, you can buy your way into, you could become a terrific TV-built brand. You really can. I mean, if you've got the money. And there are plenty of examples. And the fact of the matter is, sight, sound, and motion, and that kind of broad exposure is still the best way to grab someone emotionally, right? And create some sort of emotional response from people and build a brand. It is very tough to build a brand online only. It is very tough. And I think a lot of companies realize that tried to build brand around display advertising. And they realize there may be sight, but there's no sound and motion for the most part.
Sure.
It's tough to tell a story. So how do you tell a story? Well, give me 30 seconds on national TV, or give me a minute on national TV, and I can tell a story, and it's completely under my control. So I'd like to say, no, that's dead. It's not. It's very much alive. But there aren't that many brands who can afford to buy 30 and 60-second increments enough to fully tell their story.
Right.
And if you think about social media and digital media, that offers another opportunity to tell a story in a different way.
So looking at social media, are there brands that leap to mind that you feel are doing something especially well and meaningful socially? And then on the flip side, these monologue-built brands that continue to tell their story through traditional things like TV.
I actually don't know if the verb is, who's built a brand, using social media. I don't have that answer. I'm sure there are a bunch of very small brands that really, really sprung up from the ground up in social media. I do think there are some larger brands who have done some amazing things with social media. So if they've not built their brand, they certainly reinforce it. So I think Ford has done a terrific job with social media from the beginning. And in what seems like it was so simple and obvious and almost overly obvious now wasn't so in 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. So for example, they did this great thing with the Ford Focus where they gave a bunch of bloggers, I don't know, however many focuses they gave them, 10 or 20, and had a bunch of bloggers drive them for a certain amount of time, and they rotated among a whole bunch of bloggers and just said, look, take this car, drive it, and tell us what you think. And it may seem like that's table stakes now. Give a bunch of bloggers free stuff and have them use it and talk about it. But at the time, I remember reading Ad Age and some of the trade magazines, and people were like, this is revolutionary. The whole idea that you would just give people stuff without some sort of quid pro quo, that they would show up in an advertisement for you, and then sort of allow them to talk about it in a good way or a bad way was revolutionary.
Sure.
And so they've sort of, I think that they've kept that up pretty well. They understand that there's risk associated with social media, but the reward of doing those sorts of things can outweigh the risk. So look, but by the way, they still spend a ton of money on advertising. So I think they do it quite well.